Welcome to In Confidence, where what we share in confidence helps us grow in confidence. Today is Women's Equality Day, and we are so lucky because we're going behind the curtain with Jill Furman, a Tony Award-winning producer who's produced In the Heights, Hamilton, and now Suffs, a groundbreaking Broadway musical about the women who fought for the right to vote. On today's episode, we're going to talk about what it takes to lead something meaningful. How do you build trust? How do you show up with confidence when the outcome is uncertain and when your profile of leadership is about empathy, kindness, and knowledge? And what does it look like to use your voice to advance equality on stage and off? Jill doesn't just produce theater. She produces stories that shape how we see leadership, equity, and each other. Let's get into it. Welcome to In Confidence, Jill.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to be here.
We start every session with a question around what are you the proudest of in the last year of your life?
Well, if I may, I'm going to pick something from the last 13 months of my life, which is when Suffs won 2 Tony Awards. It won for Best Book of a Musical and Best Score of a Musical, 2 of the biggest awards that a musical obviously can win. And it was particularly thrilling because we had been at the Public Theater first. That was our first run. A lot of shows do. Every show is different. Every show has a different development track. But we did our first run at the Public Theater, and we got mixed reviews. We had it was a great experience. We learned so much, and we decided to roll up our sleeves and really make the changes that we thought were necessary to take the show to Broadway. And what happens often is that a show needs to do work before it moves to Broadway, but it's very hard to do all the work that is required. It's expensive, it's time consuming, people don't agree, but we listen to the audiences, we listen to ourselves and to our colleagues, and we made a lot of changes. And I just believe that the show belongs in the pantheon of great American musicals. I'm not just saying that because I worked on it. I think Shana is a genius. And I think that with time, people are going to recognize how special it is. It's an important show, but it's also entertaining. And the score is incredible. And she won 2 Tonys.
I love that. And we always say feedback is a gift. And so often we get feedback because we're conflict avoidant people. And we just go, okay, like you hunker down or you dig in your heels. I love that you were open to it.
Absolutely. You have to be. In truth, if you have a show out of town or at a not-for-profit in town, and you get amazing reviews, sometimes it's a sign, or it tells the creative team, oh, we're fine, we don't have to do anything. When in fact, it is very helpful to get all the feedback from different people.
And the win means even more, that you know how much effort you put into it.
100%. I mean, by no means am I comparing what we did to what the suffragists did, but it was a little meta in that we were not only women, but largely a group of women who we really rolled up our sleeves and we did the work. And we kept marching, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. And now, if you can just tell our audience a bit about who you are, how you make a difference in the world, just so they understand how deep we're going to go into this incredible success you've had with Suffs.
Sure. Well, thank you for saying I make a difference in the world. I would say I am a mom first and foremost. I have a 10-year-old son. I'm a native New Yorker, and I am a theater producer, primarily Broadway theater. And I've done a number of shows that I believe have had something to say, that are important, that are still entertaining because we need to entertain, that's our primary job, but that either change someone's life for the better or allows a child to see themselves up on stage. So I've done a number of shows. I don't do that many because it takes a very long time. It's a real labor of love. I don't like a lot of what I see, or it's just that I don't feel passionate about it, and passion is key in my business. I'm selling my passion at every stage. So, I did In the Heights and Hamilton. I saw a very early version of In the Heights in 2003, and Lynn was a baby. He was 23, I think, and he played Usnavi. And by the way, he wasn't supposed to play Usnavi. He was just doing it like sort of to fill in. Tommy Kail, the director, who also directed Hamilton, said, you know what, let's just do this for the workshop and then we'll find someone. But he came out on stage and he started rapping about his bodega. And I thought, oh my God, who is this kid? And I like sat forward in my seat in a way that I don't usually. And I wanted to be in his life and I wanted to be in the world of this show.
Yeah.
So anyway, I did In the Heights, I did Hamilton, I did Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella, which was Cinderella, but we had a new book writer, Douglas Carter Bean. He zhuzhed it up a little bit. So he gave Cinderella agency. She wasn't just a damsel in distress, right? And so I think, I like to do things that are important, don't taste like spinach, but do have something to say, and might make a difference in the world or to people in the audience.
Well, you've touched my life. I've seen every one of your shows.
Oh, thank you.
And I do have to tell you a story about In the Heights, which is I was at McKinsey and I had a team that was visiting here from Latin America. And we were in the New York office for a month. And one of the young women was going to go to Columbia Business School. She's from Colombia. And I said, what would you like to do? She's like, I'd like to see In the Heights. And I bought the whole team tickets and we went and she goes, I'm going to live in America. Aww. And that's the kind of stuff that you do. I'm like tearing up talking about the work you did. I saw Hamilton 3 times. I saw that production of Cinderella twice. I mean, I just love how you've touched my own personal life. So thank you for doing that important work.
Oh, that's so kind of you to say. I'm very proud of it.
You deserve to be.
Even if, I think we can measure success in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
So even if a show, for instance, Suffs, which I didn't mention, but in that list of shows, obviously it didn't make its money back, but I think it will continue to make money for its investors, and I also think it will make a really positive impact on the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are talking to each other. I know this is filmed in advance, but we're going to air it on Women's Equality Day, which is the day we all got the right to vote. And we're celebrating all the stories. And I have to start off by saying we are friends now because of Lindsay Shookus and Kristen Merrick from Women Work Effing Hard. And they brought us to see Suffs very early in its run on Broadway. And so shout out to Lindsay because that's what this day is about, which is all these women coming together to collaborate, not compete, and continue to move things forward and have progress. So this happy Women's Equality Day. Woo, we're wearing our suffragist white. So for anyone unfamiliar with Suffs, because that's what we're really going to dive deep into, can you give a quick overview of the story and what makes it so powerful, what drew you to it?
Of course, yeah. Suffs is essentially a story about the women who got the 19th Amendment passed, which gave women the right to vote. It's about Alice Paul and Carrie Chapman Catt and their teams of suffragists. And by the way, it's a history that I never learned in school. I went to an all-girls school in New York City, and I had no idea who these women were.
These are not household names. It's almost like Alexander Hamilton was not a household name.
Exactly.
Like you hear
Some
Susan B.
people thought
Anthony.
he was a president.
Yeah, no, you think Susan B. Anthony, you think Elizabeth Cady Stanton. When Alice Paul shows up, I'm like, wow, that's a new one.
100%. I think maybe there were 2 paragraphs in my textbook, and they were about Susan B. Anthony and Seneca Falls, and that's all I knew. And so I obviously thought that was insane. But it's largely also about the way social change is affected, and that it is messy and it takes a long time, and that the work is not going to be over in your lifetime, but that you have to. A central thesis of the show is that you have to keep marching. That's our finale, and it's about the notion, I'll quote it, the path will be twisted and risky and slow, but keep marching. And progress is possible, but not guaranteed. So I think there are a lot of very important lessons for women in general. We can't give up hope, and we have to keep marching. And one of, I'd say, Shayna's North Star when creating the show was a line from the Talmud, which is, you are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it. And that is just sort of part and parcel of the whole idea of, you keep marching, you keep going, and it's complicated and it's messy, but you can get it done. And we have to thank our foremothers for what they did, and then we have to hand the baton to the next generation.
Well, I know the musical focuses on a very specific period of time, but one of the interesting things I thought was the way in which they thought about generational clashes, right? There was a whole group of suffragists before this moment, and there was almost a clash in terms of philosophy and approach and getting your hands dirty and hunger strikes. And can you talk a little bit about why you all chose this period of time specifically?
Sure. I mean, I think, well, first of all, it was basically 1913 to 1920, which was the decade or part of the decade in which the amendment actually got passed. And these characters, Alice Paul, who no one knows about, was largely responsible. And she's someone who, and it ties into the whole notion of, honoring your foremothers and passing the baton, because she was part of the young upstart generation. She was a rebel. She pioneered picketing at the White House. It's the first time it was ever done. She came up with the idea of wearing white, which I'm doing today in honor of her and all the suffragists, to stand out in photographs. And she wanted to make a lot of noise. She believed in a federal amendment and not going state by state. Whereas Carrie Chapman Catt was older, and she had learned at the heels of Susan B. Anthony. And she, she said slow and steady wins the race. And, there's a line in the show where Alice Paul says, slow and steady, we might as well be dead, the rate we're going. And so there was a lot of, butting heads over tactics. But the point of it is that this always happens in social movements. And I think it often, or maybe always, takes all different kinds, different generations, different ways of doing it. You have the same motive, but you have a different way of getting, or the same end game, but you have a different way of getting there. And so I think that was inherently dramatic for Shayna to dramatize.
Well, and I love that, because I think oftentimes we just celebrate the victory, and for us it's like a fait accompli. Of course we vote. And so to get into the inner workings and how hard it was and a lot of the tension that existed, it makes you understand it makes you appreciate that victory even more.
100%. And it wasn't a perfect victory by any stretch of the imagination. And we don't shy away from that in the show. It was largely a victory for white women. It was racist. Alice Paul, even though she was fighting for equality, was willing to push women of color to the side because the Southerners then wouldn't have backed what trying to get the amendment passed.
The reason I love that you did two things that I thought was really heartwarming for me to see is we have a best-selling suffragist collection, which I know your whole cast received scarves from us.
Loved.
And we had it was an internship project, and they put all the articles together, and someone said to us, you forgot the women of color. And I'm a woman of color, by the way, right? And then the intern class afterwards went back in and added Mabel Pinghua, added Ida B. Wells. They added back to the print. And I thought, wow, we forgot it, even when we designed our own best-selling product.
Right.
And we went back and talked about it. The second moment that I thought was really moving to me is, and I hope I don't ruin it for people if they're going to see it on tour, we're going to talk about the tour in a moment, is when the mother writes the letter to the congressman. I was in tears that scene.
And that really happened?
It didn't really happen. I thought it didn't. I thought it was really dramatized.
No, it really happened.
So can you talk about that particular scene? Because that was the one where I was like, oh, how could we not give women the right to vote?
She's the reason. A mother is the reason why we actually got the right to vote. Because the mother of Harry Byrne, who was a freshman legislator in Tennessee, very young, he was going to vote no. And his mother sent him a telegram. And she said, I lost my husband in the war, your father, and if I was busy raising you, but if I had had the chance, I would have liked to have gone and marched also. And, think you have a young daughter, and think about her legacy and her future. And it's a really special, there's so much in the show that you cannot believe is real. And, obviously she took poetic license, certainly in terms of imagining the inner lives of these women, because there's not that much written about them. But these key moments were true. And he voted aye, and that changed the course of history. So
yeah, that's the song where I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know that was a real story. You know, you said earlier you don't do many shows. How do you choose what you are going to work on, and what drew you to this project specifically?
Well, first and foremost, I want to believe that the show has a commercial viability. And so I like doing new things, but I don't want anything that's too niche. And it has to have great music. And it's very hard for people to write great music. And so I have to believe in the composer and the lyricist. And I want there to be something new in the story, either the way it's told, like for instance, Douglas Carter Beane revamping Cinderella for a modern generation, even though it was still set in the past. And Lin-Manuel using hip hop to storytell in ways that I hadn't seen done in theater, and in both In the Heights and Hamilton. And Suffs was a story that had never been told. And I thought, you know, if I don't know it, you know, no one knows this story, and people deserve to know this story. And I have to say, when Shayna was pitched the idea originally by my producing partner, Rachel Sussman, who became obsessed with the idea in grade school when she couldn't find books on suffrage. So she had to go to her, you know, like the public library to find books. And she became obsessed, and then she read Jailed for Freedom, which is Doris Stevens' firsthand account, and she's actually a character in the show. And she reached out to Shayna and said, I think you should write this. And Shayna stayed up all night, read the book, and then wrote to her and said, yes, I'm in, let's do it. And then at the time, they hadn't had any commercial experience, and they wanted to work with a female producer who hadn't done it before. So, I mean, who had the experience. So they came and pitched it to me. And I was so taken by Shayna. First of all, Rachel's awesome and an amazing producer. I learned a lot from her, and she's, you know, 2 decades younger than I am, and she's amazing. But Shayna reminded me of Lin-Manuel Miranda in the room, because obviously they have a very different sound, but her passion and enthusiasm for the subject she's telling is infectious. She's so smart. She just makes you lean forward in a way that, you know, most people don't, and it's the way I felt when I first saw In the Heights. And I just thought, she is the real deal. And frankly, I'm biased because I've worked with both of them, but I think the two of them, Lynn and Shayna, are the best musical theater lyricists writing today, without a question. Obviously they're also amazing composers, but the lyrics are off the charts, I think, deep and smart and rich, and, you know, lots of internal rhymes, and just very clever. I just felt like, okay, she's the real deal. This is a subject that people need to know about. And I believe it can be commercial. And as long as it's not too much of a history lesson, we don't want people to feel like they're in school. And so that's what drew me to that. And I primarily want to do original musicals. I'm working on something now that's not original, which I'll talk about also, but it's an important story that I felt needed to be told. So.
Well, and how long ago was that? Just so people understand the timeline.
It takes forever. Yes. They started working on the show, or they joined forces in 2014.
Wow.
They came to me in early 2016.
Oof.
Yes. And we were supposed to have our first production in the fall of 2020.
Okay. Well,
and then we know what happened.
Yes.
And the truth is that I think the show is better for it. I think having the time and the space to work on it was very helpful to us in the developmental process.
It's interesting. One of my favorite Alice Paul quotes is around the mosaic. Each one of us puts a pebble in, and then we get a mosaic in the end. I feel like this is the pebble in the greater mosaic that Alice Paul envisioned.
Oh, that's beautiful, yes.
Suffs centers on the right to vote, but it really gets into the road to true equality. What can we learn from some of the struggles? What are the ones that really stood out to you that still apply today?
I think just in general, the idea that it's not going to get done in your lifetime. And it's very complicated. And it takes a really long time. And, you know, it's amazing. These women had less power than anybody. And yet they did it. They pulled it off. But it took years and years of fighting. And so I think we can all learn from that, whether it's, you know, in politics or just in our everyday lives, that like we need to just keep going. And like I said, obviously not equating what we did to what the suffragists did, but just the idea that we persevered with this show and we did not give up, and we just wanted to tell the story, and we thought that the story deserved to be told, and we were not going to take no for an answer. And so I think that just sort of the overarching notion of using your power and just persevering.
And I think you feel that in the show. I think you feel, it's almost like when a chef says, when you use the really good ingredients, you can feel the love in it. I felt that when I saw it.
Oh, thank you.
You know, Suffs made history with an all-women and non-binary cast and creative team. And I always love it when you see teams that walk the talk. Just, you know,
Sure.
I felt it. What further steps would you like to see your industry take in that regard?
Sure. Well, first I should just mention that it wasn't all female creative team. It was largely female. And, you know, we had a female director, a female creator, 2 female lead producers, and a female choreographer. But we did have some Dudleys. Dudley is a character in the show who was...
we need allies.
Yeah, we need
allies.
Exactly, we need Dudleys. We all do. Be a Dudley. We had socks that said "Be a Dudley," and so you know, so just to mention that we had men. We're equal opportunity. You know, we don't want to discriminate against men, but yeah, I just think we can empower women by hiring them, and giving them the chance, and opening up doors. And, you know, I never want to compromise the integrity of the piece, but, you know, you want to look for the best people for the job. Often the best people for the job are women, or people of color, or, you know, it's just any way that we can be inclusive and represent what the world looks like. It's important, and art means more now than it ever has. And so I think, you know, I don't take that responsibility lightly. And in fact, I'm working on a show called Wonder right now, which is based on a young adult novel and movie about a boy with a craniofacial difference who goes to school for the first time.
Is this the Jennifer Garner film? I'm just trying to remember which film
This
or is
was,
it Julia Roberts?
Julia Roberts.
Julia Roberts. I did see
Played
this.
the mom.
Okay. Yes.
And the book was, you know, it sold almost 16 million copies worldwide. It's a beloved book around the world. And the movie made over $300 million worldwide. And it's about a kid with a craniofacial difference. And so it's been very important to my team to actually cast the show with kids who have facial differences of some kind. It's not easy, obviously, because there aren't, you know, it's hard to find kids. First of all, it's hard to find kids who can act, but then kids who have facial difference who can act and sing and dance, because this is a musical. I thought that the show sang, which is why I wanted to make it into a musical. But we are trying to tell the story with kids who have differences, and we're working with a writer named Sarah Rule, who's an incredible writer, Tony nominee, Pulitzer Prize finalist, who has come up with a very creative idea and I don't want to give it away, but as a way to take the onus off of a kid with a difference, so that they don't have to do as much. They don't have to carry as much of a load. And I think, you know, oftentimes I said that I mostly do original stuff because I like creating worlds and I like taking the risk. And I don't want to just see a movie or a book just plunked on the stage in the, you know, and just with music. So the way we're telling the story, I hope is giving it sort of a reason for existing on stage in a different format. And it is allowing that community to be seen in the way that it deserves to be seen. Now, truth to tell, we'll see if it works. It's hard to sustain it as a commercial producer, but it's very exciting. We're going to the ART at Harvard in December. We're doing a workshop right now. But like you were saying, walk the talk. Talk the walk, walk the talk. I'm trying. We're trying.
But it's like what you said earlier. It's all real effort,
Yes.
right? Like actually walking the talk, making progress is super hard.
Yes.
Everything you're describing to me, I'm like, that's hard.
Yeah.
And that's hard. And why would you keep going?
Yeah.
I think that's the question is
Yeah.
you just keep going because you love the work and what's going to say.
Exactly.
As a mom, it must hit very close to home.
Yes, it's incredibly powerful. And in fact, it's funny, I just took my son on safari. And it's the first time I went, and we had a magical trip. We were gone for 2 weeks, and it was awesome. And then we're working on this workshop of Wonder right now, and they did a sing-through of the material on the third day of rehearsal. And I've been working on this. This is another show. I started working on it, I think, getting the rights in 2018 or 2019, and cut to 2025. And we're sitting around the room, and they're just singing at the tables, and I was weeping the entire time. And I think part of that, because I was thinking about this time that I just had with my son and how special that was. And there's a song that the mother sings to the son called Beautiful. And I feel like that song is going to be sung, I mean, I hope, at every bar mitzvah, when a son gets married, they're going to, because it's not just about kids with differences. Everyone feels like the other sometime, right? So that's another example of a show, even though it isn't original, where I felt like it's meaningful, could make a difference, and it has something to say that I think is important.
I love that. Well, I want to talk a little about producing a show, and it's something you said from the line in Suffs, though. Is you have to lead without any guarantees, right? This is 100%. A huge amount of money at risk, a huge amount of time, effort, people's livelihoods. How do you build the trust that puts a team together? Because that's actually our next big theme after, we spent all this time on confidence and gravitas. My next big theme I'm thinking about is how do you build trust with people? What is your process when you're putting that team together? And what are some of the things you do to have everyone trust each other?
Well, I think that's an excellent question. And not only are there no guarantees, 80% of shows on Broadway don't recoup their costs.
No, I did not know the number was so high.
Dumb business. It's like the dumbest business. And our barometer of success is recouping. Right? What business would be happy with just breaking even? So it's really hard. It's gotten harder. It's extremely expensive. It takes forever. Supply chain issues. It's so hard. The numbers aren't back.
Sounds like fashion. Sounds like our fashion business. No guarantees.
I think probably every business is like this to a degree, right? But I think building trust. I've built personally. I think I have a body of work and a reputation that people want to sort of go with me and trust me. And I think my job as a producer is to be a cheerleader, right? And to keep everyone's morale up, even when the chips are down. It's like a confirmation bias. People know I've done this before. I've been successful. I have a good reputation, I hope. And so people trust me. But I've also been lucky. And I don't know if it's only luck because I say luck is the residue of design, right? So, the shows that I've worked on have really created families that really, really care about one another and really want to lift each other up. And I think part of that is the nature of the show itself. Part of it could be the way I lead. I don't know. I mean, I do it with other people. I don't ever just lead produce by myself. But, I want to lead with kindness and compassion. And I listen to people. And so I think it's not easy, but I think it's one of the most important jobs as a producer.
And if your body of work didn't exist, if it were your first show, what are some of the things that you do that people would say, I want to follow her into battle?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, it's funny, you were talking earlier about sometimes it's the quiet person in the room.
Yes.
I'm not the loudest person in the room. I am happy. I'm happier when someone else is going to do most of the time. It's fine with me. I'm very much a best idea in the room kind of person. I trust people. I don't care where an idea comes from, and I will give credit where credit is due. So I don't have an ego about it. So I think from the get-go, I'm sort of open to, just it doesn't matter if you've done this before. It doesn't matter if you're young. I think there were some producers who, Rachel, my partner on Suffs, weren't that interested in partnering with her. They thought maybe she could, they would take it over and she would be on the sidelines. And I'd never, ever felt that way because I thought, okay, I can learn so much from her. And first of all, it's her show. She's bringing it to me. I couldn't do that to her, and I would never feel good about myself. But I think, it just helped the process that we worked together. And, I think just like different viewpoints, listening to people is very important.
Well, and so our new book that we're working on, there's 4 elements of trust we talk about. The first one is acceptance, which is I don't judge you. I take your strengths. I also take your flaws. Openness, which is I listen. I'm open to the process. I give feedback. I take feedback. And then the ones people usually talk about are reliability and congruence. I follow up. I have high integrity. I'm honest. All of those things are people usually associate that with trust. And as you're talking about it, I love that you lead with openness and kindness and acceptance. Yeah. And that I think is not something I would traditionally associate with a Broadway producer. Right. So it's a very different way to lead.
I don't know if it's true of a lot of Broadway producers. I mean, maybe some, certainly, but it's how I live my life too, right? So I like people and I want to be surrounded by good people. Life's too short to who needs the nonsense?
Who needs the drama?
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious, did you get a chance to take our quiz at all?
I took the quiz.
What were some of your superpowers?
First of all, I loved the quiz because it reminded me of those quizzes that we used to take, or I used to take in the magazines like Glamour and Cosmo, but with heft, right?
Was designed by a McKinsey partner. I know you went to business school, so one of my old bosses designed the quiz.
It was very thoughtful, and I was actually impressed. I thought that what it said about me was pretty apt. So my superpowers are giving, believing, and knowing or knowledge. And I think, in terms of knowledge, at least in my business, part of the knowledge is knowing what you don't know. I think that's true in any business. I think people should, I'm very willing to admit when I don't know something. And William Goldman, who wrote A Princess Bride and All the President's Men, among many other things, he very famously said, nobody knows anything about the movie business. And I always use that when I'm talking about the theater business. We have no idea what's going to work. The DNA of every show is different. I remember when I was producing In the Heights, I was working with Kevin McCullum and Jeffrey Seller, who had produced Rent. They were working on Avenue Q. I did not have experience. I deferred a lot to them. But we each had, for big decision making, we each had a vote. And everyone assumed that they were going to vote, the two of them were going to vote the same all the time, and I was going to be on the outside. But the truth is, that these two very seasoned producers often disagreed.
And you were the tiebreaker?
And I would be the tiebreaker. And so it was a real learning for me. And they're the ones who taught me, like, we don't know. We don't know what's gonna work. We don't know, and since every show is different, you just have to be willing to listen. So in terms of knowledge, I try to learn about the market. I try to learn, but nobody knows anything.
So I'm going to be the astrologist here because when I hear people's superpowers, I get a window into their style.
Okay.
And I just as a backstory is, there's 8 superpowers that we identified in the data set.
Right.
And it was inspired by Janet Yellen being told she didn't have the gravitas to be the head of the Federal Reserve. She was the first woman head. And Ezra Klein at the Washington Post said, it's because she's soft-spoken and she's collaborative and she's empathetic.
Right.
She's the most qualified for the job. Why do we only label extroversion and charisma as worthy of notice? So that's why we created the quiz, is because less than 20% of people have extroverted forms of confidence. And that's why I always say 80% of us are the quietest people in the room, but doing the hard work. And as I hear you talking about, I'm not surprised you have giving and believing, because you lead with warmth, empathy, listening, optimism, like a belief in what you can do for the future. I often tell people it's the Ted Lasso effect, right? He was underestimated as a coach because he wasn't a commander.
Right.
And then the knowing one I love, because people who have knowing are the thoughtful, contemplative, research-oriented, right? They'll do the curious hard work. And I always say it's the 3 Black women in Hidden Figures. You can't send a man to space without the computers doing the real math.
Right.
And so I imagine as a producer, you know how to do the math. You're like, I will recoup the cost, but by the way, I will lead with heart.
I will try to recoup the cost.
I will try to recoup the cost.
I often don't. I mean, it's very, very difficult. There's a saying in my business, you can't make a living, but you can make a killing, because it is very hard to recoup those costs. But yes, yes, I am willing to do the work. I'm willing to roll up my sleeves. I'm willing to defer to other people who know more than I, but also just acknowledge that a lot of stuff we don't actually know. We don't know what's going to work. We don't know what will be part of the zeitgeist, what will, I don't know, what people will react to. So
I love your superpowers, because
thank you.
I
do too.
And I think, like, if I think Broadway producer, those might not be the 3 that I would have picked. And that's why it feels so inclusive. It feels like all of us have a chance to do these things in different ways. And not the single way we've been told is the best way to get things done.
100%.
How do you think about your responsibility going forward now that you've got this incredible body of work? And I love your new project, by the way. How do you think about the way forward in terms of have they changed the way you think about your work?
Right. Well, I do take my responsibility seriously. And I don't want to commit myself to something unless I'm really going to give it 150%. And unless, I talked about passion earlier, you just have to be so passionate about it. But yeah, I mean, listen, it's a business, right? So, I have to believe that something can actually be successful, because I'm beholden to my investors. I want to make them eat whole, and I want to make them money. But also, I can't. The art is so important, especially right now, like I said, and so, yeah, I don't take it lightly, and I think about my son a lot now too.
Did he like Suffs?
He loved Suffs. Oh. In fact, he said, I liked it more than Hamilton, and I said,
what?
Oh, I know, and I think maybe he's just he was just being sweet, although I did produce both of them, so he could have liked either one. Yes. But I don't know. In fact, the other day he said, maybe I could be a Tony voter sometime in the future. We watched the Tony Awards the other night. I had recorded it, and it's very sweet. So yeah, I think he was proud. In fact, his 4th grade class at school went to go see Suffs. And some mothers said, this is now opened up a whole world. Not just now they're talking about women's history and the fact that they can't believe that women didn't have the right to vote 100 years ago, but also this has opened their eyes to Broadway. Yeah, and that feels really good too.
Well, let's talk about Suffs going on tour, because earlier, before we got started, I was saying this has to go on tour because everyone needs to see this, and now they can.
They can. I'm very, very excited about it. It's going on tour. It starts September in Washington. We're teching the show in Yakima, Washington, which is a few hours away from Seattle, and we're going to do 2 shows there. And then we go to Seattle, where our official opening is. And then we're going to be in 43 markets. Altogether, we're going to be in San Francisco, San Diego, we'll be in DC, Boston, Philly. We'll be all over the country. We'll be in Nashville, we'll be in Tempe, Arizona, we'll be in Minneapolis. And there's a lot of excitement about the show and a lot of buzz. And I think you're right. I think this is a show that people They may not know that they need to see it, but they're gonna when they discover it. I think it's going to be so thrilling.
I love that you're going to Nashville because that is actually the last state to vote to ratify the amendment,
and
right?
in fact, where it was ratified was literally either across the street or right down the street from the Performing Arts Center.
Yeah,
So,
I stayed at the Hermitage Hotel. It's gorgeous, and they have a whole display. I feel like they're going to do a lot of promotion for you.
I'm sure they will, and I hope so. And I want to go there. I want to go to. I'm not going to be at every opening or every stop, but I'll go to a lot of them if I can.
Well, this year's International Women's Day theme is Accelerate Action. And on International Women's Day, we asked 25 women to each give us one idea everyone could do to accelerate action towards gender equity. I think action one that I'm going to suggest is everyone has to go see Suffs. That's the one thing you can do on Women's Equality Day. What's one thing anybody can do, Jill?
They can celebrate women. They can get behind female candidates for office. They can run themselves. They can just celebrate and lift up other women.
I feel like that's the theme from the show, right?
100%.
If you don't see it being done, go run for office, go get involved.
Right. You can do it. You can make a difference.
Well, thank you so much for coming on In Confidence today. This was such a joy to celebrate
You're
Women's
so
Equality Day together.
Welcome. Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I loved it. I loved our conversation.
Yay. And everyone go see Suffs.
Please go see Suffs.
We're going to put on our website all the dates. So
Okay,
we'll put a little
fantastic.
link to your site so everyone will get a chance to see it.
That's
Thank you.
awesome. Thank you
Yay.
so much.
Yay. As we reflect on Women's Equality Day, Jill's work on Suffs reminds us that the fight for equality didn't end with the right to vote. It continues every time we choose to tell our stories, trust our vision, and lead with purpose. I'm so grateful that Jill joined us today. Equality isn't just about rights. It's about voice, opportunity, and the courage to take up space. Whether you're producing a Broadway show or advocating in your own community, the real change makers are the ones who show up with conviction, collaborate with care, and lead with gravitas. So today we honor the women of history and the women who are making history now. Even the progress we make, we may not see in our lifetime, but it still matters. We remind ourselves the story isn't finished and we're still writing it together. Thank you for joining us for this episode of In Confidence. If you love this episode, I hope you'll share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe so you never miss a moment of inspiration. And the words of my 9-year-old self, I see you, I value you, and I believe in you. This is In Confidence.